We should just all have batteries out carrying around this. All-purpose batteries, everything plugs in.
I'm just going to convene, Brad, I'll convene the town council and then you convene water. Tell me when I can, Millie. Can I convene?
Yes.
Yes. Fantastic. Good afternoon, everyone. Call this meeting of the special meeting of the New Shoreham Town Council to order. Today is Monday, October 16th. It is 3:02. Today is our annual meeting with the water and sewer boards.
Okay, and I will call the. I'm also going to call together the joint meeting with the New Shoreham Sewer and Water Commission with the town council of the town of New Shoreham today, October 16th at 3:03 p.m.
Fantastic. So what do we have first?
First item on the agenda is discuss any major policy changes of the Water Commission.
You up, John?
Yeah.
Welcome, everybody. Good to see everybody.
The obvious for those who just take the name and where you.
Oh, yeah, and I should say Molly couldn't be here today.
Is
She
Jim
was off.
Jeremy on or not? No. Is Jim Jeremy on? No, okay.
Did you send Jim? He is waiting for it.
I sent him our Zoom link, maybe there for the meeting.
Oh, so. Okay. You want to send him an email?
Just send him a quick link, I guess. It's okay, we can continue without him to a certain point.
Just please make sure that you use the mics and.
Yeah, I got it.
make sure they're live.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
thank you.
So number one, discussion potential action regarding allocation policies and procedures. And if you remember, we have this annual meeting.
Right.
We had a long meeting and a fruitful meeting, I feel like last year.
Yeah.
Where we discussed, a lot of the issues that were going on with water, with capacity, and obviously later on the agenda, we have an update to all the work that's been done over the past year. And one of those, what happened out of those discussions was talking about kind of why public facilities are getting 75% off or a 0.25 multiplier for allocation purchases. And allocation purchases are also the contribution of data construction. It helps offset large capital costs such as our big expansion. So that was a discussion that kind of we throw our arms up about. And so we're circling back around to that discussion at this meeting. And obviously we've had plenty of time to do, some research about what is driving this. So for water, in your packet, you have water allocation excerpt from that's Jim Jeremy calling me going, yep. Where are you?
Hey, Mike.
He's gonna come in, yeah. Ellie, are you sending Jim a quick link?
I'm trying, I unfortunately can't get it into I can't get into it from here, so I have to send it directly from this computer. I don't think it's associated with an email program,
Okay,
so I'm gonna do my best, okay?
thank you.
So, John, this document, the water allocation document that we have, this is the existing policy.
Yeah, so this is our rules and regs. Right. And it's different for sewer, which Dylan can explain that the sewer is a little bit more difficult where it lies in an ordinance.
Right.
So if you look down under 2.3a, the second paragraph, it says the only way, where I can find this, if an application involves a public facility under section 19.1541, I'm assuming of the town ordinances, such application shall be forwarded to the town council for review. So that's the only, and year to year, we have said public, you know, year to year on a policy basis, it says in our script, we give 0.25 multiplier 2. So on the water end, I don't feel like we have to do that much except change our motion at our allocation meeting. We can still forward you guys applications, you know,
Yeah.
for public projects. I feel like that's a good check and balance
Sure,
that you
yeah.
guys, you know, but that
There's
doesn't
nothing
mean.
else that gives the imprimatur that this is in fact a public project.
Exactly,
Yeah,
yeah,
right,
yeah.
right.
So anyway, I don't feel like besides letting you guys know this is the policy that we'd like to go moving forward, whether we need to really do anything at any other level besides that. So water, I feel like is simple. Again, sewer is a little bit more difficult and
Yeah.
we'll get there when on that agenda item. So we,
Talk about eliminating the ratepayers paying for everything.
yeah.
For, but only the ratepayers are paying for the town project.
Yeah, the idea in the last
So,
the idea in last month's meeting, if this is attached to, you know, large infrastructure projects, that the water ratepayers were subsidizing public projects. And to be honest with you, public projects are generally can be fairly big too. In other words, they take a lot of allocation, which is a fair amount of revenue that we're missing out on. So that was what we agreed on at the last meeting.
How do other towns deal with it? Just curious, do you know? Or districts?
Allocation is a
Yeah,
unicorn.
you've seen one allocation model, you've seen one allocation.
Allocation is our allocation is a unicorn amongst anything that I've done
Yeah.
research on.
Yeah.
But it, you know, as I've said over the years, and I'll continue to do this, we kind of got a square in the 80s and I'll keep on, this commission is going to continue to round off those edges.
Right,
And I don't think we can change the wheel with how far deep we've gone down this road. But we can round off the edges and try to make the system better as we move into the future. And I think we're doing that here. I don't know why, I don't know what the intent of this was originally. Except to give the town a break, but everyone at this table felt last year that water ratepayers shouldn't be such subsidizing, especially large, you know, public capital projects.
Mhm.
And obviously we have a big one coming up and that's what's,
right.
we have the west side housing development, which is kind of driving this, which is a
Sure.
large purchase.
Yeah.
So,
Right, absolutely.
so we can move on if everyone's in agreement with what we talked about last year.
Going forward, you know, ratepayers shouldn't pay for public projects, should public pay for ratepayer benefits.
Well, it'd just be even. It'd be like any other project. You know, it'd be like a commercial development, a single family dwelling, and just put it on the same playing level or revenue level that we're getting from any gallon of water. Yeah.
Well, it's leveling
Yeah.
the field by saying that ratepayers shouldn't be paying for a public project, but there are residents, taxpayers paying for projects that will benefit ratepayers. So I'm wondering whether this is policy that you guys are trying to sort of say, hey,
Well-
if it's about ratepayer benefits and rate system benefits, then that should be ratepayers. If it's about public, then it should be public. So I'm just trying to understand what.
You mean example of what?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Here, give them a microphone too, because we're gonna be shifting microphones around.
In different budgets, in different costs, we'll go through the budget later. But there are places where I think taxpayers are footing parts of bills, period. And so I was wondering whether there was trying to say, hey, this is really about ratepayers and the rate system versus the public. And what I'm hearing is maybe not, but it's maybe.
Well, I'm not hearing that because I can't think of an example of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because right now with the building a water supply, the ratepayers are paying something that's benefiting the town. Okay, but they're subsidizing on
And taxpayers
on your business or your loan. On your business or your loan, it's you know, they're putting in their own sewer or water lines, they're paying 100% of that. The town's not paying.
But taxpayers are for any bonding or.
You're not bonding a private private.
No, I'm talking about private.
There, well, are you talking about the two current bonds that are out there that the town agreed to future? So,
I'm just asking.
so I feel like this decision was made in late last year when we went for a $5.6 million, loan, which is about $3 million. And, the water didn't ask for 20% of that. I feel like that was kind of the one project that in the past history right now is the water main replacement project in 2020 that the taxpayers are participating 20% of that bond. So currently on the water end, that is the one bond that the taxpayers are helping out with. Yes. I feel like this discussion came out of like, hey, we're not going to be participating with the 20% on this large.
Yeah.
And basically what this is doing, we're expanding capacity and we're making new allocation. Therefore, we're able to sell new allocation. And then I feel like it was almost like, hey, we're not going to participate with the bond that you guys are putting forward. Therefore, maybe we shouldn't be asking for a 75% off the allocation now. But I feel like that was kind of the trade-off a little bit in that meeting. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt like that's the way the discussion went. And it was 11 months ago, but that's what I took out of it a little bit.
So then moving on to, and we need Jim on here for updates on the.
Jim did get on.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jim did get on.
I'm in. Can you hear me?
Hey, Jim.
How you doing, guys? Where am I with the schedule on the projects? Basically, as the council knows, there was a $3.1 million bond authorization on which was to take care of the loan amount on the $5.6 million project. Just in a quick summary, there were three components to this project. One was the addition of a third water storage tank to increase the storage volume to 248,600 gallons. The next was to develop a new well field located in the former Schmidt property. And the final and third step of this was to add an additional reverse osmosis water treatment system to gain another 100 gallons a minute or additional 144,000 gallons per day. Right now, John and I and David have been working very hard on getting these proposed projects scheduled. What we're looking at is the water tank to be online in the fall of 2024, with the construction to begin in the spring of 2024. This again is subject to materials availability and also approval by the planning board, because the additional tank will require a variance to that site. Also in the spring of 2024, the two new wells for the Schmidt property will be submitted to DOH for their approval. Once we gain their approval, we will bid the project and construction will begin during that time. In the spring of 2025, the new well fields and related appurtenances will be fully operational. So at that point, by the spring of 2025, both the water storage tank and the well fields will be fully developed and online. We're also projecting that in the spring of 2024, bids will be issued for the third, the fourth new RO system and the building addition. So basically, we are on track what we told the council last year. that we were pushing for 2025 to be the point at which we can begin to entertain additional customers to the waters, large water customers to the system. So that's kind of where we are at this point in the schedule. Again, a lot of this will be based on planning board approval, on materials availability. But we are working with the tank manufacturer to try to expedite some components of that tank so that we can at least install the first ring of this, which is the most critical, this spring. And then if that's the case and all the yard piping is done, the tank could be built during the summer months without interfering with John's water production and project there at the water company.
Just so I'm clear on the timeline, so you would hope to have the tank finished by next fall. And then the new wells basically to fill it by the spring of 25, is that right?
And we still have the bottleneck of actually treating the
Yeah,
water.
right.
Yeah, so we do have a treatment component. We do have 3 treatment units that can make a fair amount of water, but one of them serves as a
Right,
redundancy.
yeah,
In the case of failure, which
right.
happens, which have had to happen plenty over the years. So I mean, I do feel like this is a, everything goes right type of timeline. It does build in a little bit, but when we say it's going to be ready in the summer of 2025, and we're saying spring, as we know, 2 months throws
Yeah.
off a summer, so it's hard,
Yeah,
if it
absolutely.
bleeds 2 or 3 months, you miss the summer, and we all know Block Island's very annual like that,
Yeah.
where these 60 days matter.
Right.
So I do want to point that out, that, May of 2025 is a difficult thing to pin down, whether it's going to be finished for summer or not, that's still, we're still a while off of
Right.
that. So I do want to point out later on the meeting, it's Jim and I's recommendation to start opening up the longer term planning for what we're calling conditional allocation, so that and Sven went to some of those meetings, our meetings. So we're issuing kind of conditional for these longer term projects so they can get through their planning process. And in case that's been a problem for
Right.
the housing board. So we can say, hey, we're conditionally approving this because we're far enough along in our process. So
Right.
I just want to let you guys know what we're planning on
That's
doing
very helpful.
at our allocation meeting.
That's very helpful. Do I recall from our last meeting, I'm sorry, or from a meeting that we had, or a water meeting that I attended, around how public projects are treated? I remember it used to be a percentage basis.
Yeah.
Can
Yes,
you
we'll-
walk us through that?
Yeah, and we'll deal with that next year.
Okay.
When it gets closer, and this is rounding off our wheel I was talking about.
Yeah,
So currently it's still 75-25. So private projects get 75% of the whole and public projects get 25% of the whole. And the issue and the flaw in that is when a private project
Right,
takes
exactly, yeah.
75% of the whole, then next year public projects are not
right.
left with much. If you have 100 gallons and it takes 75 the next year, whatever the math works out, it's
Yes.
not much. So we had talked about, and this isn't happening this year, this will happen next year when we more are selling this allocation that we're making. We're going to create different, essentially, buckets of water for certain projects. And we're going to hold the 25%. So let's say we make
Right.
100,000 available, 25,000 will be available to public projects in perpetuity.
Yes.
We're not going to recalculate that every year, because what happened here, I believe, let's say we held
Yeah.
our line 10 years ago, then we would have
Yeah.
saved water for this project. I think we're going to meet the timelines and everything, but it would have made the process a lot easier, wouldn't it have? To say, let's say we made 100,000 gallons available. if we had 25 available. So after this, we'll subtract whatever the 2,000, 3,000 gallons from that 25. But I'm proposing, and we've all agreed to this in principle, and then we're gonna try to leave for existing buildings, right? For well failures of businesses and residents that are actually here and need water, which we found this year actually happened to us.
Yes.
And we had to scramble to get some water. So we're gonna try to leave a fair amount. I don't think it's gonna be 100% of what's out there, but we're gonna try to leave a fair amount for these businesses,
Contingencies.
for the National, the Harbor Side, the Spring House, for these
Yeah.
contingencies of businesses that are already existing and operating for potentially hundreds
Sure.
of years in
Yeah.
our town. And then you leave a smaller or whatever portion for new development.
Right.
And we will keep those, right? We're gonna
Yep.
say, we're gonna set these gallonages and we're gonna leave for public, for new, and for existing buildings, certain
Right.
percentages, but those will not be recalculated over the years. They will be held in reserve for when these wells fail.
Thank
Because
you.
I have a feeling a lot of wells on Block Island are about 40 years old.
Yeah.
And they're failing
Yeah.
at an alarming rate all of a sudden. So yes, I'm glad you brought that up, but we are still on board with that. It's not done.
And I'm glad you
We'll
refreshed.
work
my
on this
failing
for
memory
next
on
year.
it.
What's that?
I'm glad you refreshed my failing memory
Yes,
on it.
no, it's okay. It's
Yeah.
important to bring up in this process because I do feel like it's correcting more errors. And I don't know whether the sewer wants to follow suit, but someday the sewer might be in the same
Right.
position where we're dwindling down for public projects when there's a good public project coming up. And it's been auto calculated every year to basically dwindle down that amount of water. So we might follow suit with sewer.
In my opinion, it's wise to that direction, and certainly I don't want to be sitting where you're sitting.
Right.
now.
Yeah.
So, if you
Right.
want
Yeah.
that-
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, yeah, but thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
It's good to remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I just ask?
Please.
My mic's on?
But we-
Okay, green light.
The National, the Spring House, all of these wells that you said are close to 40 years old. Do you get reports on what they're doing in their activities to maintain their own wells? And
Sometimes there's been some wells cambered lately.
Businesses having failures of theirs well.
Yeah,
their wells.
yeah, there's, I'm in the know with Department of Health and a few of them been cambered recently and have had assessments of the condition of the wells. So, but not all of them get cambered, but DOH is not really, this is the first I've ever heard them requiring that. So this is a new practice by them. So I have a feeling we're going to get more wells and eyes on them actually, rather than just running them and not knowing what's going on. So, and cammering wells is becoming a much easier technology. It's easily deployed as it was maybe 20 years ago or so. So they're deploying them more often and requiring it. But yeah, I have assessments of 2 wells in the larger wells and now camera assessments of them that I haven't read myself, but at least I got kind of a report about it. Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question about sort of along the same lines. There's an expectation on the life of a well?
It really depends on the material it's in, how much it's used. The kind of water chemistry you have. Is it highly corrosive? Is it not? The more corrosive the water, the casing's gonna corrode faster. Is it plastic? Is it, these older wells are all steel.
Mhm.
So how brackish is the water? How deep it is, what schedule, meaning the thickness of, did they use? Is it thicker steel? Is it thinner steel? There's all sorts of variables that go into it. Did the weed whacker weed whack crazy around it? I'm dead serious. How much does it get used? Does the screen, if it gets used more, the screen might become compromised. Construction practices, it all goes into it. There's 1,000 things I could think that could shorten the life of a well or lengthen it.
But I guess I was asking, it sounded, when you said it, it sounded as if there's a finite life to a well, but there are so many components that a well can go bad, but not be bad permanently, can be fixed.
Depends. You know, some wells will show bacteria showing up in the well and then they know something's wrong with it. Some of them fail catastrophically and fill with sand and you're done. So, yeah, that's happened to us at the water company. So, and then you're done. All of a sudden it goes from okay to that in about 2 seconds and it fills with sand and you're,
So it's both.
yeah, it's both. Yeah.
So I want to know.
Yeah, it can go fast and it can go slow. But cameraing it gives you an idea, which I hope DOH makes everyone camera them because it's a great assessment on what it looks like and what to expect on our end. So
Interesting.
yeah, I could talk about this stuff for a long time, so get me off the subject.
So as far as item 3, which is discussion of major policy changes, which is your ordinance.
Certainly, and to avoid, I don't think there's any need to rehash that. That was appropriately stated. It's following a similar thread and spirit of the fact that we are in agreement that the ratepayers should not be subsidizing public projects. A proposal will be made to the town council to look at ordinance 19-465. Subsection 3, to consolidate the language as the costs of the system vary by the type of use by physical entity that is public or private. Use shall be determined with different multipliers. We'd like to consolidate that language, so a proposal will be made following meetings. And that's the only major change. Again, John had mentioned the discussion of allocation to public and private. I would like to contribute to that conversation as we move forward as well.
That'd be great. I'm just curious that we know from John has more gray hairs that there's we've had multiple summers of worry on the water capacity side. What about sewer capacity?
Sewer capacity, now my limiting factor, I think I've said this, is it's removing solids.
Yes, right.
We only have so many boats going off the
Right.
island, so much room. We bring propane, gasoline, diesel back and forth. Removing the solids from the island is the limiting factor. Now, as we've moved into a relationship with firm, that has been alleviated to some extent. But that would be a limiting factor for sewer far before we reach the 80%
right,
or
right.
100% capacity as far as
Yes.
treatment goes. That being said, I would like to have the conversation about the percent allocation for public and private, because again, I do not want to be sitting in the seat where I can't provide treatment.
Sure,
So,
absolutely.
and there's great consequences.
And the agreement with Berm is working out well.
It is,
Yeah,
yes, very well. I couldn't be happier with that.
Would change.
Berm is moving the solids out.
Yeah, block on. They had the contract back in 2012 and then we went to mega disposal. And there was just some difficulties in always moving boxes off the island. I have to say that Sean and Block Island Recycle Management has done very well for us.
That's good to hear. That's great.
So item 4 is discussion of major policy changes. Do that.
Excellent. I don't really have anything significant. I know we're going to talk about the management agreement on the next item. Oh, no, I actually, because I moved my head, around. This is because of my lack of discipline with microphones. Does anybody on the council have any major things you want to talk about?
No major things. I think I attended a number of the Water and Sewer Commission meetings a while back, and John referenced it, and I think the more we can do that, or you guys come and just sort of have more dialogue, the better. In the past, there have been a year where it's hardly any, not by any means, just no urgency. And I think we need to continue to stimulate that, because in reality, we're all one. But sometimes we start acting like, it's just not quite synced up. So the more we can be one, the better.
This is not by way of policy change at all, but I do think in some ways follows from Sven's point. Please know how much we appreciate the work that you guys do every day. I know how stressful things are. I know you have a gigantic capital project that you're trying to keep in shape. I just know that we recognize the work that you do every day and know how important it is to us as a town. John, I know with the Harborside, the pressures that you dealt with then, I think it was nothing short of heroic what you and so many others did. And I think I have a tendency anyway to sort of think about the detail or the issue of the moment. So I just wanted, when I was thinking about this meeting, I just wanted to make sure that we said that to you guys, because it is, they're such important functions. And when you're not hearing about them, it's because you guys are doing such a great job. And then when we hear about them, every time I'm aware of, you guys are on top of them. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny service. You try to go unnoticed.
Yeah, exactly.
That's our goal.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's the goal of water and sewer, is to be unnoticed, or any utility.
That's right.
But when you get noticed, it's usually bad. So we kind of live in the shadows.
Yes.
But thank you, I appreciate that.
I do. Thank you.
Discussion potential action regarding the management agreement between the town of New Shore and water and sewer.
And before we get into that, ask one question that was sort of brought up, but I want to slip it in here because it's not policy. Are there any major or recommended actions that you, John, especially, based on the Harborside and based on the probability that another major issue could happen?
Question.
That we should really be thinking about from either an asset point of view, obviously, thank God Kirk had sort of started a cooperative situation, but is there, pumps,
Presumably,
taking salt water and putting it on the fire was a pretty important
No,
moment.
yeah,
I guess I'm asking.
no, this
not
is a good,
policy,
it is policy though. And
But it's a little more tactical.
yeah, yes, no, that's a great question. And it's good to brush over this after this all happened. And, and I attended what's called a hot wash of kind of the command and control, or, debrief with EMA and the police chiefs and everyone who helped out that night. And my big thing I had to hit home is, they say, and it's hard to estimate, but they use 3 million, whether they use 2 million or 4 million, who knows? But
yeah,
we will never have that kind of capacity.
right.
Ever. It's not going to happen. In 20 years, in 30 years, in 40 years, we will never have a 5 million gallon storage tank up at the Block Island Water Company.
Right.
Right. It's just not sustainable. The water gets too old.
Right.
It's just not going to happen. And I made sure they understood. I said, we're doing a capacity expansion, which buys you maybe a couple more hours. But we don't have the capacity to fight a large scale fire, period. We have the capacity to hit the fire for a few hours, and then you have to start moving towards another source. Now, given that, and it was brought up in this meeting, that if those boats couldn't get over there, it could have been a different outcome. And I laughed because they said, oh, there's some big seas out there. And I was thinking that's 5 days a week in the winter time.
Yes.
I was
Yeah.
like, that,
Yeah.
so, you know, I would like the town or you guys to support, you know, and I don't know what the answers are when it comes to, you know, I'm not a firefighter and I have walked around with the piece of demo equipment that we've all
Yes,
seen.
yes, so did I.
And I don't know whether that's the answer or not, but we walked around with a few of the captains and looked at it. It's a really neat machine. I don't know whether that's the answer or not, but supporting an alternate way for the fire department to get alternative water, like something like that.
So.
Or that, a
yes.
piece of equipment, that's not up to me or us, but
What is the demo machine?
all right, so they have if you go past the
The
power
Bitco
company
lot.
lot across the street, you know, the
Where they
upper
got
lot
the
of the
Christmas
fire
tree.
company. Yeah, where the Christmas trees go, where the farmer's market parking. It's like it's a trailer unit where a 40-foot arm can extend out that has 10-inch piping in it. And it's on all hydraulics. It can go out and stick an arm down into a body of water. Let's say it's the ocean, a pond, whatever. It's got a macerator on the bottom, so it could chew through just about anything, seaweed, whatever comes into it. And then it can pump god awful amounts of water and it can lay, you know, then you can lay 10-inch pipe. Let's say the situation of a Dodge Street fire, right? That's a little bit farther away from the ocean, right? Or a situation where your boats can't pull up, where the seas are big, it's winter, it's summer, whatever. Because the boats came over that night and were able to provide a lot of water out of the ocean easily, right? So if they can't make it over for one reason or another, whether it's a boat, I don't know. That's up to the fire department to decide. But I urge you guys to support whatever the fire department needs for, you know, non-fresh water, non-drinking water from our facility that doesn't come from our facility, to support anything that they need to get whatever that machine is, to support that, because without those boats that night, it could have been very different.
So for what it's worth, Mary Ann and I actually have a meeting tomorrow with the governor in Providence to sort of talk about some of this infrastructure stuff from the fire barn to this kind of pump. We also are engaging with our federal delegation because it's an $800,000 piece of equipment at the end of the day. And, you know, when you look at the call data, clearly a lot of that is to serve visitors, and that's a wonderful thing. But at some point, you know, we've got to figure out where we're going to get dough for that.
Yeah, no, but yeah,
We're in the same place.
Yeah, we will have you know, around 500,000 gallons of storage after this expansion.
Yeah.
I don't plan on in my career to building another one. We're maxing out kind of our facility, but you know, what it becomes is how old of water do you want to drink in the winter and all that. So it's very difficult, but we don't ever have the capacity to have 5 million gallons. So a long-term solution and a better solution so that we can become more resilient and self-sufficient on that would be great. Because if that happened and the seas were 10 feet and they got out of Narragansett Bay and turned around, then we're into a different situation that night, i.e. all of town burning down, or, you know, a lot worse of a situation. So becoming more self-sufficient on getting alternative water outside the water company, I strongly support, and I hope you guys would too.
Yes.
And I love to hear that you're getting meetings, and stuff like that. Yeah.
How many feet is this on?
It's about 40 feet. I think it was, I don't know that's just in a casual meeting where people pulled up to the thing and looked at it. So I haven't seen a spec sheet on the thing, but I believe it was said to 40 feet, but you know, yeah.
Doesn't seem very long.
But that's 40 feet from.
I remember the night the mansion burned and everything here, I'm a lot older than everybody else here. I've lived here a lot longer. And it's 1963. They had to, and they couldn't stop that fire. They just could contain it. And they could save Littlefield Farm, which the Coast Guard did. They had to run water lines across what is now the minister's lot, what was the minister's lot before the house were, to the Georgian Swamp, which you probably couldn't even get into today. Because they couldn't get into the Mansion Pond because it was April and it was too wet. I mean, the fire department, those guys all know all this stuff. But, 40 feet doesn't sound like anything.
No, I'm,
I
Yeah,
think the
like I
idea is
said,
that
the-
it's a pump and,
Yeah, well,
and these guys.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there was
That pump would go to a manifold.
No,
Yes.
yeah,
understand.
no, I know what you're saying. 40 feet doesn't seem like a lot when you gotta go over brush potentially, but that's not for me to decide.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know, they decide what they think is best
Yeah.
for their operation because they know it a lot better than we do.
And John, in part, and this is where it gets to be policy, I guess my feeling is that water, I'm gonna leave it at that, better than probably anybody else on the island or one of the more knowledgeable people, whether that's residential, whether it's water flow, whether it's helping the fire department, things like that. So I think not only am I thinking in my question about Dodge Street, a great example, or, somewhere else, but if it's a dry summer and something happens at a house, how are we sort of making sure that we're supporting the fire department with as much knowledge about water as possible.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
No, believe me, I thought before this fire, I thought of a lot of scenarios, and after this fire, just a million other scenarios start going through your brain. So, no. Sorry.
Back to the management. I mean, as far as we're concerned, what we have here right now, other than, what we discussed for policy ordinance, which has really nothing to do with that. This is, we got here, it's a question of what you guys are looking for,
You mean,
as far as any changes or anything like that.
well, Marianne proposed a $7,000 increase, which would be to roughly half of the base administration cost.
Our reaction to that presently is no.
Okay. Well, will you walk me through the logic of why a 50-50 split on the base administration cost would not be worthwhile? Particularly given we've been talking today about the cross subsidization. I'm just curious about this.
Well, by legislative mandate, actually, the town has to perform these services free of charge, number one. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, as far as legislation goes, right?
I'm sorry, I just didn't hear you, Brad.
By legislative mandate, these services need to be provided free of charge. There is no cost associated by legislative action. Okay, we've agreed in the past to come up with and work with you on these things. But as far as an increase without any explanation, and as far as, to be honest, there's fiduciary responsibility from the town's point of view. And our answer at this point in this meeting would be no. Because of honestly, a breach of financial fiduciary responsibility.
You think we're breaching our fiduciary
I
responsibility?
think it has happened, yes.
Okay. Well, I have to say, I don't get it.
So Marion, he's stating that it has to be paid, he believes. Where's the fact on that? He didn't say it is that it is. He said he believes it to be paid. So,
Are you talking about the legislation?
yeah.
I have to see that legislation. I don't know that. Matter of fact,
Our legal counsel's here, he could probably answer that.
So the enabling legislation for both the water district and the sewer district states that the town shall provide the financial services in general. I don't have those agreements, those legislative acts in front of me right now. It doesn't speak of cost. It just says the town shall provide the services. So essentially the management agreement is a form of a pilot, that you see with a lot of colleges and everything. It's payment in lieu of taxes. It doesn't say that required to pay, it doesn't say that you're not required to pay. So That's the general legal landscape. And if my computer didn't die, I would just pull it up and read it to you. Not looking to hide the ball on any of this. But essentially, it's a policy decision between the three bodies, as it were.
But providing services and paying are different things, right?
Yes, and it's silent on the payment. It just says shall provide.
So therefore, therefore, the statement about a breach of fiduciary responsibilities is a little strong.
No, that's a separate issue, I believe. The chair can elaborate on that if he so wishes, but the breach of fiduciary duty is separate from whatever is in the.
It doesn't have to do with the management agreement, but as far as needs, that's what we're talking about. Because the fiduciary responsibility was breached this year. Okay, so I asked for an increase with no explanation when that has not been properly followed through on. The answer is no, until we can.
How much a breach? Sorry.
We can't talk about it because it's potentially subject to litigation. And I think both counsel have suggested that we not talk about it. That's my understanding. Is that right, James?
That's correct. Hello, James Callahan, Town Solicitor. We'd prefer any fiduciary breach related to a certain subject not be discussed in this forum, at least. I can speak to Attorney Patarka about that, and so can Nick Solitro in more detail, but I think the issue you're discussing is separate from the other issue.
What the heck is going on here? I have no idea. I sit on the town council. I don't know what you're talking about. And a breach of fiduciary responsibility sounds like we should have the the finance director in here. What's going on?
Are we allowed to talk about the topic? Is it the whole water line? Is that what the issue we're talking
I have no idea. So I'm
Yes,
asking.
it is.
Okay.
And we're not allowed to talk about the water line in public because
Because there's a threat to sue.
we're not allowed to, or it's our decision not to.
Talk
It's
to
a-
the solicitor.
It's our advice that you don't discuss that, at least in public at this time. Martha, if you'd like to talk about that with us in detail, be more than happy to discuss that with you in private.
So backing up, getting out of that, right now, what I see is this number 52,000. My understanding was that's part of the 7,000 increase, and that's not.
We're not agreeing to that. We're not.
And are you saying, I'm sorry, let me just finish if I can. Are you saying that we should be paying 100% of it? Is that what I just heard you say? I thought that's what you said about the
Yeah.
legislation, and that is what you're suddenly demanding. Not at all. That's what I heard. It's what I heard about a minute and a half ago from you. So can you help me with what is acceptable and why this wouldn't be acceptable?
An increase at this point because of the situation that we cannot discuss. We're not saying no to the management agreement or anything in there right now overall. We're saying no to an increase. Okay, and that has to be discussed. Can't be discussed here, other than the fact that we're not agreeing to the increase.
Okay, so if the water matter wasn't in an issue right now, would the increase be a problem?
Considering that we had an increase roughly, I believe it was last year, and it's every other year that we traditionally have been doing. And to receive a memo saying there would be an increase with no explanatory detail or what was going on is, at this point,
But
why
there-
it's requiring it is not acceptable to us.
Okay, so Mary Ann, you have the. What
Yeah,
makes
it's
up
fine.
the-
Well, I don't think we're. yeah.
Yes, they have it also.
Can I just make a suggestion though, if it's not acceptable to the sewer and water commission to have a $7,000 increase to help cover costs, then let's just not do it. And you want to do it every other year, so we'll save 7,000. That's what I just heard, right? So we're done.
No. Yeah. Well, you're dealing with fixed cost increases. right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just
which-
heard they don't want.
which are here in our packet.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But where's that money coming from if we don't pass the increase? The town's gonna absorb it?
Yeah, that's the position of water and sewer.
Guys, we're all one town. I don't know why this has to be a struggle. It's a proportional increase based on the overall increase of the town, correct?
Yes.
So what I propose, increase of 52,000 from 45 to 52. What that makes up of is strictly the basic administrative costs, which includes the workers' comp. It includes premium for property insurance. It includes ADP services. It includes estimated costs of the audit. Those five numbers total $104,000. I took the 104, divided by 2, and came up with the 52,000.
I just need to reflect for everyone's understanding that the current financial statements per this year do not reflect 45,000 taken for the management agreement. It reflects 40 per company. That being said, it would be a $12,000 increase to the next fiscal year per each entity,
So
sewer and water.
it's 45,000.
That is not reflected on the statement.
In the 2023 agreement, it says 45,000.
But it's not reflected on our financial statements. It is not reflected on the budget. That
So
was
I would
presented
defer to
the
Amy on that.
ratepayers. Which makes it complicated. That's all I'm saying.
I just have and maybe this is more for Amy. These base administrative costs, did these increase year to year? From FY 23 to 24, I guess 24 to 25. That's my only question.
Sure. Can I do the first one first? Which is the 40,000 per company is the fiscal year 23 expense. The fiscal year 24 expense, which is the year that we're currently in now, is 45,000 per company. And what we're discussing today is the proposed amount for fiscal year 25. So just to keep those in their respective fiscal years.
So are you?
John, sorry?
Just a quick question. So are you saying that the 45,000 was not to be reflected in fiscal year 24? Because that would, if we are talking about fiscal year 25, that would reflect a $12,000 increase for talking about 52,000 for the budget that was presented. That's all I'm trying to clarify. Thanks.
Did you hear that, Amy?
I heard it. I'm still a little confused by the question. So
Per this discussion, we had approved a management agreement of 45,000. In the statements presented for this fiscal year and the budget that was presented to the ratepayers in the last budget session for fiscal year ending 23, moving into fiscal year 24, I believe we were to have a management agreement or a contract for the town represented as or reflected as 45,000. It's only reflected as 40. So if we're talking about the next fiscal year being 25 and we're increasing the management agreement fees to 52, that would reflect a $12,000 increase, not a $7,000 increase.
So if we represented a shortfall in the budget and made a budgeting error, my understanding is that the management agreement would still prevail, but that's something that we would talk about.
Thank you.
So the intent is that the current year, fiscal year 24, is represented by a contribution from each company of 45,000.
Thank you.
To John's question, the
Yeah.
Go ahead, Amy. Is it
that's
your
okay.
turn?
I didn't hear that, so
Yeah. John, will you re-ask?
No, it's just the base, I was just curious, you know, if the 7,000 kind of equals the base administrative cost increases year to year, that's all.
I would not represent that. We don't necessarily do this exercise on an annual basis. I can pull up while we talk what the most recent
Right.
prior exercise was.
Because I think, I mean, just, you know, coming from my position and hearing this, I think just what the board kind of wanted was an explanation a little bit on this memo. I guess, rather than just an increase, is like, hey, the base administrative costs have gone up by 14,000 to provide, you know, the audit went up and the payroll processing and all these things went up. So therefore, there's, you know, kind of, it's not like a blind increase. And then that's what I'm just hearing. Hey, you know, like, hey, that our fixed costs went up by 14,000. We'd like to cover those additional costs by increasing this contract. That's what I'm getting at from what I'm hearing from the sides here.
In other words, in a brief memo, we have had no background as well. You know, software costs have gone up, that sort of thing, but we paid a huge amount of money for software purchases and agreements. Was it 2 or 3 years ago? I'm not sure.
So it's here and Amy prepared it.
Yeah, no, it's about the increase, not about this, but I'd also like to point out, and it's not in here, that the water sewer board did, you know, ask at the last month's meeting, they asked, hey, can we get an explanation of this prior to this meeting, so this meeting would go smoother? And it, you know, and no one attended the meeting. So we sent out Susie sent out a nice memo after this board motion to be like, hey, we'd like an explanation of the increase in cost. Please attend our meeting. And, you know, I thought that was a great idea because we, you know, this has become, there's some animosity here. And, you know, I think someone attending our meeting would have been nice to have this discussion prior to this meeting, and it could have, you know, simmered some tensions.
But I believe that was a timing issue, right? Where we weren't allowed to attend, the timing, right?
I think was supposed to.
It was a posting issue.
I think it just said a representative from the town. It didn't ask the, you know, the whole council to attend.
But we couldn't attend because we hadn't posted it.
Okay. Well,
It was an
could have
open meeting
attended.
exact thing. What's that?
Someone could have attended it, and you know, the point is someone could attend it and explain the increase. That's all. It didn't need to be one of you.
Right.
Either.
Yeah,
It
fair
could have been
enough.
one of you
Wasn't it,
or not. But
didn't we talk about this at a council meeting?
Talk about what?
This increase, what it represented?
No, we did not.
Yes, we did. We sat here at this table.
Martha, I don't know why you're angry with me. I'm just.
I'm angry. I'm angry. at the
Apparently,
situation.
yeah.
I am, because I don't know what's going on here, and we have these numbers. We've talked about these numbers before. We talked about workers' comp. We talked about I thought it was the last council meeting we had. There was, what was that in the context of? Okay. Thank you.
Right, I'm going to suggest something. Let's just meet again in a couple of weeks. Have conversations, figure this stuff out. This is not unfigure outable. We're all on the same team. You don't need to be angry or have animosity. We'll figure it out. Okay.
Well, but I think there was a request, so you feel like you're still waiting on.
That's kind of what I'm talking about, Neil.
yeah, and
That's what I'm talking about. Thank you.
And many years ago, I suggested this approach, and I would say, you know, when it comes to water, I'm one of the younger people here, but I've been in these meetings for a while, probably longer than anybody here, oddly enough, when it comes to water and sewer. And this issue there's been animosity around this issue for 20 years.
Sure.
And it usually came at like the last second, and it would come in the spring in a budget thing. So smartly, after seeing this happen numerous times, I had suggested that we move it to this meeting
Mhm.
so that we had time to talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's not this last, because it'd always come at the last second and be like, oh, we got to do this. And it'd be budget time and boom. And then you guys would have a special town financial meeting. It was voted on and then we were left with the bag. And sometimes it was done after the fact. So I changed the management agreement, and proposed the changes to it to have it fall on this meeting so that differences could be settled before budget.
It ought
That's all.
to, there ought to be a rational construct around it, and I'm concerned that we don't have that right now, but we can figure it out.
Yep.
Okay.
I don't want to take the word, but I thought.
Why
this
not?
Had to be requested prior to September first.
It-
Hasn't the town always followed this process?
It has to be requested by September 1st, yes. And when we missed the deadline,
You just can't. ask.
and there was one time when I was relatively new and I missed the deadline and
It's what
it is what it
Yeah.
is. And it's my understanding Amy was at the last meeting. And she's well aware, she's the one that put the spreadsheet together, so she would have been more than happy to answer any questions she had on it.
Amy was at the last meeting, which was a nice to have a representative there, because there has not been any, probably the last 6 or 7 of our meetings from the town or from the town. So, and that's one of our requests as well, so there be someone at every one of our meetings. I think from a communication point of view, everything.
Terrific.
So just to be clear, we have a new public works director. So I am transitioning out of those meetings and Mike Shea, I think Mike's been at the last few meetings.
Yeah, Mike's, yeah, it's been nice.
And
Yeah,
if
it's
I'm not
good stuff.
mistaken, Amy's been there via Zoom.
Not in that capacity as far as.
What capacity did you think he was in? He's the public
Well,
works, right?
let's just be clear that Mike just said, and this wasn't discussed, it wasn't presented in that way, which just to be fair
Mhm.
to everyone, I think there's just a misunderstanding or miscommunications happening or lack thereof. We could do better about communicating together.
Mhm.
As you had stated in the initial opening or Sven stated, we don't always get to meet. And a lot of things are lost in the shuffle. We don't want to have forums. We want to, err on the side of ethics.
Yeah.
Everything has to be done appropriately and sometimes it's difficult with everyone's schedule.
Mhm.
That being said, I believe everyone is on the same team here, but there has been some oversight in communication. And I just believe that let's just move forward and let's try to present it in a better way. The next time we meet, just understand that we weren't aware that anybody was changing capacity or transitioning in or out. The questions were asked at the last meeting about the drivers for the cost increase.
Mhm.
Those who attended were not able to provide those answers. So that was asked, that was not.
Mhm. Yep. I get it.
So, and I think you're right, a couple of weeks, let's get back together about it. Dylan, I think Neil echoed it before. I'd love to go around the table and make sure that everybody says what you said, and that is we're on the same team. Because I don't feel that. I don't feel that from a number of folks. And that's in conversations outside of this meeting. And I feel like there's a we and a them. And I think if we want to keep acting that way, we can, and we fail the community.
Well,
Let me finish. And I think that goes on all sides. So over the next few weeks, let's try and get to be a week, right? Let's figure it out. We're no longer in grade school, we're no longer in high school. And if really we're rejecting something without asking questions, or we're mad because an explanation wasn't fully established, let's work those things out and let's not pound the table and.
No, I'm just gonna say from our end, and I will state this, from our end, we have always shown up for the common good. Sewer and water will always be provided to the town. We have always shown up. We have always been there. We have always provided that service. And we
I think
always
you know
will.
the same thing for the
So-
council,
So I just want to let everyone know that my first priority is common good of the town of New Shoreham. And however that is affected, whether it's to meet the town in their needs, to whatever capacity, I've always risen to that end. Whether it's taking over the potty contract, the town contract for that when no one else would, whether it's helping out at the town beach when those systems fail, whether John's helping out with the fire, we're all here to serve the town. I think the breakdown is simply in communication. I think it can be fixed. I'm not saying that there's not some frustration here, but it doesn't have to be anything beyond that. We can work it through. I just want to state these things for clarification for everyone, that some of these things were said, some of these things were asked for, and then weren't provided. And then on our end, yes, we've always been there and we always will be. And that's how we leave that.
Thank you, Dylan.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right then, anything else? You guys still have a meeting, right? So we have to adjourn ours. Can someone make a motion to adjourn the town council portion of this?
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no.
Thanks
you,
for
guys.
meeting, guys.
Right.
Thank you, Jackson. All in favor?
And now you're having your
Yeah,
regular monthly, right?
You guys want to sit over here? Yeah, I'm sure you'll split. Do we want to switch sides and keep on going?